We're going to start recording from my home office here rather than my regular office, which is 45 minutes over a mountain pass. Hopefully, that'll motivate me to start creating some more consistent videos. And what I want to do here is start by answering a viewer question. And this one comes from Phil. I've been using the X-T30 for years, but want to upgrade. Should I skip the X-T30 Mark II and go to the X-T50? Well, these questions are always very difficult to answer because they are so subjective in the way that they should be answered. The best camera on paper may not be the best one for you. Like the camera that has the most megapixels, the most focus points, the fastest processor may not be the one that's suitable for the type of photography that you do. Now, both of these cameras are great cameras. I've used the X-T30, the X-T30 Mark II, and when the X-T50 came out, I traded in the X-T30II for the 50, and I've pretty much always kept the 27 millimeter f2 lens on it. It's a great walk around camera, low profile. The X-T30 Mark II is still sold out at like B&H Photo as of this recording, but you can still find them used. There's a big market for them because they are great cameras. So let's talk about some of the main differences between these two cameras, and then I'll let you decide for yourself, based on what's important for you, whether or not you should upgrade to the X-T30 Mark II or the X-T50. And let's start with the exterior. You can see both of these cameras are pretty much the same size and weight. The X-T50 is a little bit thicker because it does need room for the built-in image stabilization, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But for the most part, if you held these two cameras side by side, you wouldn't be able to notice those differences. The X-T30 Mark II actually used the same body as the X-T30. The second version even just says X-T30 on the front. The ergonomics between the X-T50 and the X-T30 body are quite a bit different. You'll see the X-T50 has a larger hand grip on it. If you found that X-T30 difficult to hold, you'll appreciate the larger hand grip on the X-T50. Another common complaint of the X-T30 body is the position of the Q button. So many people were accidentally brushing that Q button and bringing up the Q menu that Fujifilm pushed out a firmware upgrade allowing you to completely disable that Q button. That's how much it was driving people insane. The slight redesign on the X-T50 has greatly negated that problem. The biggest control difference between the X-T50 and the X-T30 Mark II is that the drive dial on the X-T30 body has been removed. And that was replaced by a film simulation dial, allowing you to quickly change your film simulation without having to go into any of the menus. I did an entire video about the film simulation dial that you can check out up here. It goes into some of the quirks of it and why it might be useful. But if you love Fujifilm cameras for their film simulations, this may be a reason why you go to the X-T50. There were some other small control differences on the back, like the auto exposure lock button has been moved to the column next to the LCD screen. The autofocus button has been moved to the left of the rear command dial. And since the camera no longer has a drive dial, you can still use the drive button below the film simulation dial to change between like a burst of photos, multiple exposure, panorama mode, and so on. Now let's take a look at the interior of these cameras where there are some significant differences. The X-T30 Mark II uses the same 26 megapixel X-Trans4 sensor found in the original X-T30, but the X-T50 uses the 40 megapixel X-Trans5 sensor found in like the X-T5 and the X-H2. Now this increase in resolution can make a big difference if you heavily crop your pictures. There's just more pixels there to let you crop in. And there's actually a feature in the X-T50 called the digital teleconverter. And this allows you to take advantage of the increased resolution to digitally zoom in on your photos. And not only is the sensor in the X-T50 higher resolution, but it is also stabilized. You no longer have to rely on the OIS, the optical image stabilized lenses, to get stabilization. because it's there in the camera with an advertised 7 stops of stabilization. Your mileage may vary depending on how you use the camera, but this can let you hand hold the camera in low light at much slower shutter speeds than before and still get sharp photos, assuming, of course, nothing is moving in your frame. So, this can be a big difference for you. You can also make use of an electronic front curtain shutter in the X-T50, whereas the X-T30 Mark II just had the traditional mechanical and electronic shutters. The increased processing requirements for that higher resolution sensor are handled by the new X Processor 5, which again is found in the X-T5 and the X-H2. And this will also give you a noticeable increase in autofocus performance. So let's talk about the autofocus. You have a lot of new features available in the X-T50. And the first is subject detection. You can tell the camera to keep track of like animals, birds, cars, bikes, airplanes, and trains so that when you are ready to press the shutter button to create your photo, the camera is already tracking what you told it to track and will focus right there when you command autofocus. The X-T30 Mark II was limited to human faces and human eyes. It also had that wide tracking capability, but now you can track so much more in the X-T50. You'll find some additional focus menu options in the X-T50, including a focus point wraparound, custom zone sizes, and an AF mode all selection limiter. And this limiter allows you to disable the autofocus modes that you don't use when your focus area is set to all. And I love all because it lets you scroll through all of the available autofocus modes, but you may not, probably don't use all of them. So now you can disable the ones that you don't use for faster selection of the ones that you do use. This is a small point, but it can make a big difference if being able to quickly change your autofocus modes is important to you. For those of you who love Fujifilm cameras for their image styling capabilities, the X-T50 has 2 additional film simulations compared to the X-T30 Mark II. Those are Nostalgic Neg and Reala Ace. And I have an entire course that goes into comparing all of these film simulations in depth. That course is free, and you can find it linked in the description if you want to learn more about Nostalgic Neg and Reala Ace. And then finally, the X-T50 also supports the Frame.io camera to cloud feature. And if you need your photos uploaded to the cloud right away and your camera is connected to Wi-Fi, you might find this as a big selling point. There are, of course, a lot of other minor differences between the X-T30 Mark II and the X-T50. However, I think these are the main differences that may sway you from one camera to another. If you just need a fun little compact camera to carry around with you, the X-T30 Mark II might be more than enough. And you can find it even brand new for under $1,000 US dollars. There's plenty on the used market as well. However, if autofocus performance is important to you, you want to be able to crop into your photos like for wildlife photography or things like that, or if you love the image styling aspect of Fujifilm cameras, then you may want to take a look at the X-T50 for all of those things that it can do that the X-T30 Mark II can't. And as of recording this video right now, just the body for a new X-T50 is about $1,400 US dollars. So quite a bit more than the X-T30 Mark II. You're just going to have to take all of these differences that I discussed, find what you care about, what's important to you, and then make your decision from there. If you want to learn about all of the features of both of these cameras, I have tutorial courses that go in depth into using both of these cameras. You can find those links again in the video description, along with a coupon code to save 20% on those courses. If you have any other questions or things to add about the differences between the X-T30 Mark II and the X-T50, please let us know in the comments here. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.